Everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Media Boat podcast. Today is December the 9th, 2020. Another week into the wonder that is the last month of 2020. Thank you for joining us. If you don't know what the Media Boat podcast is, we are a podcast that's dedicated to bringing you news and thoughts about movies, television, video games, and music. Not necessarily in that order. This is episode number 257. My name is Matt. His name is Mike.
I'm Mike. He's Matt. 257, on our way to 260 to close out the year. And as we chug along to close out the year, we have special surprises to close out the year.
Well, not really a surprise if you've stuck with us for multiple years now, but we are cooking up a delicious meal for you. And no, I'm not talking about the carnitas Mike's got in the slow cooker right now. I am talking about, I bet. I wish I was there. I'm talking about year-end wrap-up. It's a tradition here in the Media Boat podcast to give you year-end wrap-up podcasts at the end of the year. Basically, what those are exactly what they sound like. We recap the events of the year in our 4 categories: movies, television, video games, music, not necessarily in that order. And then once we're done recapping, we pick a top story that we believe encapsulates the year that was in that category. So what was the most important news about music per se in 2020? Then the last thing we do is my favorite part, which is we talk about our top 5 things in that category from the year that passed. So our top 5 movies, or top 5 video games, or top 5 albums, you get it. So those are on their way. We traditionally do those in the last week of December, so you can enjoy during your holidays.
Yep, we released those in the week between Christmas and New Year's as part of our wrap-up, because between them, we get 5 days and, 6 days actually, because we have a regular Wednesday show.
Yeah.
But just enough to give you guys a look back on 2020, and then, as always, a look forward into 2021.
Yes. That's the other thing, is after we're done recapping the year, we do have one last podcast to hit on New Year's Day, which will be about the year to come, all about what we're looking forward to in 2021. So you can look forward to that. In the meantime, though, this week,
unless you're listening into the future, in which case you can listen to it right now.
Yeah, that doesn't really play on the weekly show. You can't.
No,
it
really. Doesn't.
Anyway, unless somebody's going through the entire archive, which Godspeed on that one. But yeah, not this week though. This week is a normal version of the podcast. We're bringing you a normal show today, and kind of a sleepy week. I think people are getting ready for the holidays. People are locked down again here in California and a lot of states around the
hibernation of winter is coming. It's here.
Yes.
It shall continue.
But hey, with the bad news comes the good news, though. We are hearing good news about the vaccine. The FDA looks like they're on track to approve it very soon. Healthcare workers will be getting it. Some healthcare workers in Johns Hopkins University will be getting it as soon as this month. So, hey, that's a plus. So we get little nuggets here and there about good things that are happening. 2021 looks like it will be possibly promising for us getting back to normal. So
depends on who you ask.
I mean, yes, it's going to be a complicated procedure, but we're not a podcast about healthcare.
Well, no, because that leads to our first story, but we'll get there in like 10 seconds.
Yes, but we are a podcast about movies, where we start the podcast here, the movie section. And we start, we're going to skip box office again. Nothing really happened. All you need to know is The Croods was your number 1 movie with $4.4 million. Yes, $4.4 million. Not terrible when you consider the numbers that we've seen over the course of the box office since March, but still not wonderful. So some people are seeing movies, but that's pretty much the only one people are seeing.
Well, it's the only new one that's out. It's got $20 million domestically. So it's something, but Tenet hit 20 million in its first weekend. So it's looks like it's actually nothing.
And our next big new release isn't until the 18th, which brings us to our first story, which is entirely about movie release dates and whether or not they're just going to be in theaters in 2021.
So after we wrapped our podcast last Wednesday,
Yes.
news broke the following day, late the
I'm telling
following
you.
day.
I'm telling you, Thursdays. We should do the show on Thursday.
Yes, but Thursday night football does not work with my schedule.
I know. But yeah, the big Thursday bomb was from Warner Brothers, more specifically from their streaming arm, HBO Max. We've been talking for a few weeks now, actually a few months now, about what Warner has up their sleeve with HBO Max. AT&T, their parent company, had a big, basically a hedging their bets conversation to their shareholders, saying that they were evaluating plans on the future releases for film releases, because they knew that the prospect of theaters was still in the air. We've also been talking about what kind of spin they were going to put on HBO Max to make it matter in a way that Disney has done with Disney Plus, and it just didn't seem like it was there. It launched pretty bare bones, and it's been that way since it launched. So there was a lot of questions about what they were going to do special with their special property. Well, we have the answer to both of those questions all at once. Just like Wonder Woman 1984 is being planned on released on Christmas Day, both in theaters and in HBO Max, Warner Brothers announced that their entire 2021 slate will play on HBO Max and theatrically simultaneously for the first 31 days. Every film will be available for just 1 month on HBO Max before it leaves the platform, and then will continue playing in theaters with normal distribution windows. Though some films are still in production and the exact list of films is subject to change, 17 films are currently slated for this in 2021.
And these are big hitter films too. These are some box office tentpole films to be pulled from theaters, which is well, they're not pulled from theaters. Yes,
they're still
simultaneous release.
Yes, simultaneous release. So in case you're wondering what these include, that includes tentpoles like Godzilla vs. King Kong, DC Films' The Suicide Squad, Timothée Chalamet's Dune. That's a weird credit to Timothy, but okay. Keanu Reeves' Matrix 4. I'm going to skip these people attributes because they don't make any sense to me. They seem arbitrary. Space Jam: The New Legacy, and In the Heights. John Stankey, Media Boat favorite, John Stankey, who is the AT&T CEO, who you do not want to share an office with, told the UBS Global TMT virtual conference, which I've just heard about just now, that the strategy was necessary to monetize the Warner Brothers feature slate, adding, quote, "Anytime you're going to change a model, I know it creates a degree of noise, and this is certainly no exception." Sarnoff noted, I'm not sure where Sarnoff comes from, "We are really trying to work with the cinemas to give them ready supply. And we thought that by announcing that we'll have all 17 movies in theaters in 2021, that they would know that their business could operate because they will have a full stream of movies."
That's Warner Brothers president, Dan Sarnoff.
So he kind of spliced in another quote there.
Yeah.
So basically, here's what you need to know.
I thought we talked about Anna Sarnoff enough that you would remember her.
Yeah, but there's a lot of Sarnoffs in movie history, so it confused me. So here's basically what the average person needs to know. 2021, basically every big tentpole movie that Warner is planning on releasing will also be part of your HBO Max subscription for the first 32 days after its launch date. So if you already are an existing customer of HBO Max, you'll be able to watch these with no extra charge. This is not a Mulan premium. This is a straight up, you will get to see Dune from the comfort of your home without having to go to a theater. That, again, that doesn't mean that you won't be able to go to a theater if, say, you're vaccinated and you choose to. If you want to do that, you'll be able to see the movie as well. And that isn't limited to the 31-day window. If you're more of a person who wants to wait and own it, those windows will not change as well. After the theatrical distribution's usual 90-day window, you'll see digital release and physical release of those films just like normal. HBO Max, I don't believe, will impede in that way. Now,
No.
The only thing that we don't know about this is when those movies will return to HBO Max for streaming. Warner doesn't seem to have set up like an exact window for that quite yet. I'm assuming that they won't be there for a while because they'll want to encourage digital sales and physical sales after those have been released.
I assume that they will be concurrent with current HBO format, where once it goes on HBO
Mhm.
and televised, for not network but premium cable,
For cable, yeah.
and then you'll also get it on HBO Max as well.
So
But
yeah,
those windows are usually 10 months between.
right. They're longer than that initial window. So yeah, this was an unprecedented move. Disney kind of did something like this, but they did not commit in the way that Warner has here. Disney's statement was more like, we're going to focus on streaming. They didn't say everything was going to be on streaming. This is a different ball game. So as you'd imagine, reactions have been mixed depending on where you are. I
Right.
want to,
And
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead with Disney.
Mm-hmm.
It was specifically the Pixar film Soul,
Yeah.
and they didn't talk about the Marvel film Black Widow, nor did they talk about any future Star Wars films that are currently or maybe in production.
Right. So Disney technically has the ability to drop a similar bombshell if they so choose. But time is running out. We're almost into 2021 as it is. But what I wanted to add to this story was kind of the aftermath. So not only do you have the obvious aftermath that we were to expect, which is that the theater chains are surely shaken up by this. Our next story is about AMC, so I maybe we'll wait to talk about that until then. But the other half of it is that creative talent, whether that be directors and or actors in films that are slated for these simultaneous releases, have now been complaining on social media and to news outlets that they were not given a sweetheart deal in the same way that Wonder Woman 1984 was, because it was the first to be announced for a simultaneous release.
So Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot
Mm-hmm.
each got 10 million as part of this streaming non-streaming deal,
Mm-hmm.
because they wouldn't be able to get any bonuses as part of like milestones met due to box office numbers.
So what you're seeing is people in Dune and Space Jam, etc., are basically seeing that and being like, well, why didn't we get a deal like that when we're also going to be a simultaneously released film? Like, what the hell? So Warner has a lot of cleanup to do. I think Christopher Nolan, for one, was out there basically saying HBO Max is quote the worst streaming service unquote because of this, and kind of the overall idea of, as we know, he's a stickler for cinemas, simultaneous release at home. So yeah, it's a complicated thing. It's a big bombshell to throw it at the end of the year. And yeah, if we hadn't already done our year-end wrap-up podcast, I would say it's definitely eligible for biggest story of the year. Except we haven't done movies
We
yet,
haven't
so
done
maybe
movies
we can
yet.
still fit it in. But yeah, it's just, I think this is the other shoe dropping. That's literally what I texted you when you texted me this. I was like, oh,
Yes.
that's the sound of the other shoe dropping, because we talked about this at the beginning of the pandemic. We had stories about this in April, where we were floating the idea after Trolls World Tour was such a success for Comcast and NBC Universal. We were talking about, what if a studio decided to just lay the hammer down? And here it is.
Right. And you're not really giving theaters a whole lot of choice there, because
Mm-hmm.
you are the distributor and you have a platform in which you can distribute said product.
Yeah.
So the
So,
theaters no longer become the gatekeepers
mm-hmm.
beholden to the studios.
So yeah, a lot of people are saying, starting to cry wolf and be like, well, is this the end of theaters as we know it? My opinion, no. I don't think that this is the end of anything. I think it changes the conversation between theater chains and studios. I think it makes it more difficult, I think, to maybe figure out where the pricing goes, like either way. But ultimately, I think what it turns cinemas into is, instead of being the only way to see new movies, I think what it does is it puts the onus on theater chains to make it more lucrative to go see a movie in the theater. So you're going to see stuff that was already brewing go 10 times as more, like 10 times more. Like you're going to see big pushes for IMAX, big pushes for Dolby Cinema. You're going to see big pushes for those laser projections that we were talking about early last year. You're going to see a lot more pushes for, hey, go see this in a theater because it's not an experience you can get at home. And it's a win-win for the studios because they're still going to get that theater distribution. They're still going to get the revenue from home view.
Okay. I was talking with this off podcast with some other friends
Mm-hmm.
About this announcement. I just want to get this quote here that I said like perfectly, because it was like I so worded it so perfectly that
well,
it was like, wow. Okay, here it goes.
Blew your own socks off.
No, I quite did. So, yes, this sucks for theaters,
Mm-hmm.
but I also don't see them coming out of this without selling shares or partnering with new hedge fund capital groups.
Oh, yeah.
We won't see a $100 million film in theaters box office until December 2021 at the earliest. And mark my words here.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Mark my words here. That film will be Avatar 2 that gets people back in theaters.
I think you're not wrong. I think Cameron will purposefully wait as long as he needs to wait. Kind of Nolan-esque.
Right. This is assuming that Avatar 2 does stick to its schedule coming out 2021.
Which I think
makes
it
that
probably
date.
Will. But yeah, I think you're not wrong. I think that we will be waiting probably until this time next year to be comfortable to see movies again.
Not only to be comfortable seeing movies, but to have a reason to go see movies, which you can't see in your home. And that's because Avatar 2 will usher in 3D yet again, or glassless 3D. And as we've been talking, as we have alluded to on this podcast and talked about on several occasions, that because new technology will be introduced in this film, it will be a reason that you cannot enjoy it fully in the comfort of your own home. It has to be seen on a big screen, something that can make it that makes it an event, which we had talked about earlier this year of what makes you go back to a movie theater. Mm-hmm. And that is, you have to change it. It has to become an event. It has to be a reason to go back to a theater.
So yeah, the onus is on them. The onus is on the theater chains and the people who invest in them to make sure it's lucrative enough for people to get out of their homes, because until then, it's not lucrative enough. It's not enough. Like, just to see a movie in a theater is not going to be enough for a lot of people. So,
especially families, when you saw that you can buy Trolls World Tour for $20,
save money
instead of upwards of $80 to $100 at a theater.
Yep.
Because you're buying per ticket and concessions and snacks and parking and babysitters and all that.
It adds up when you think about it. So yeah, of course, this is going to be like only the start of this ball rolling. We'll see if other studios follow suit here. We'll also see what the theater chains do to react. Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting January trying to adapt to this new reality of Warner really putting a wrench in things.
Speaking of theater chains reacting and adapting, AMC is like one of the biggest chains in the US.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably the biggest at this point. I think Regal maybe is technically bigger, but the ones making the story is always AMC. They're always the first to react.
Mm-hmm.
So sure enough, here's what's going on with them. So they've already signed a new multi-year deal with Universal in July. We reported on this, that shrinks the window to 17 days for theatrical exclusivity on all Universal and Focus Features movies. And AMC had happily agreed to WB's plan to put Warner Brothers plan to put Wonder Woman 1984 on HBO Max on the same day it hit theaters. But that was as we mentioned with the talent involved in that film, that was a different deal than the current deal where Warner Brothers wants to put all 17 of their movies on streaming. So AMC CEO Adam Aron, two first names, said in his statement on Thursday evening, quote, We will do all in our power to ensure that Warner does not do so at our expense. We will aggressively pursue economic terms that preserve our business. We have already commenced an immediate and urgent dialogue with the leadership of Warner on this subject. Although it may not have much leverage amid the intensifying era of direct-to-streaming movie releases, AMC has been hammered by the pandemic, as you might imagine, and just this week filed with the SEC to offer 200 million shares in order to raise $844 million as its latest step to stave off bankruptcy. Of course, we mentioned on a story earlier this year that they seemed like they were going to be okay, that they had enough in reserves to kind of coast out. They didn't imagine, though, they would be coasting until December.
Right. When we reported that both AMC and Regal had enough runway to last until the beginning of January, not beginning of January, beginning of July, May, June, July, basically the summer season of next year, hoping that the pandemic will subside by then, and thus summer blockbuster movies would be a reason for people to go to a theater where it's hot outside and it's cold in the theater and you can escape it for 2.5 hours.
But that didn't happen, needless to say. So they had to last another 6 months. And that has been killer. And so even the giant chains are feeling it. So yeah, they really, really need this HBO deal to be lucrative enough for them to keep going. Because if Warner Brothers doesn't pony up, you could see a similar thing happening when it happened to Universal, where they blacklist them essentially. That's also not in AMC's best interest, but they might not have a choice for negotiation down the line.
Right, but this also could lead to studios buying mom and pop or shut down theaters on the cheap when real estate kind of comes around and implodes as well. Of course, that is speculation, but we don't deal in speculation or rumors here. It's just something that the idea that I've seen floating around that the smaller movie chains and smaller movie theaters might not have the capital to survive and thus have to shutter, leaving this open business, open lot, vacant for either AMC or Regal or Netflix to come in and Amazon to come in and provide a place for them to screen their own films.
Yeah. I think when somebody writes the book, I mean, in 10 or 20 years about just a big giant coffee table book, history of film, this is a chapter right here. We're living it. We're living a chapter right now because this is going to potentially change how we interact with films in a theater. It might not be like the way it's been all our lives for too much longer.
Right. And it makes me think back to, no, not last year, 2 years ago, when I saw 52 films in a theater.
Right. Yes. The Movie Pass year.
Yes. The year of Movie Pass.
Yeah. Everybody's favorite Movie Pass year.
Can't do that anymore.
No.
Can't do that for, I don't know, probably any other time in my life
no.
that I can foresee.
Okay, well, anything else to add to these kind of two interlinked stories, or are we good to move on to movie thoughts?
Real briefly, Disney will announce its upcoming slate of 2021 films tomorrow during an investors call, or at least that is what is expected to happen. And it's not just Disney films properties, but the entire Disney slate for theatrical release and Disney Plus release.
Yeah, which may or may not be the same thing after this. But we'll see.
Right. Like this past week, they might have done a whole lot of calls and meetings and shuffling around to get ready for 2021.
I would not be surprised. In fact, calling it right now, on the record here, I think that Disney does the same thing. I think tomorrow, this big story is Disney lines up with Warner saying all their 2021 slate will be simultaneous release.
I think you also see numbers from Mulan, which justify whatever position they take.
And they're going to probably pick and choose which ones are premium and which ones are not. I'm going to say that Black Widow, your Marvel movies, those are going to be premiums.
I believe so.
That makes sense to me. I mean, because they know people are going to pony up the extra money. All right.
All right.
Let's move on. So speaking of the Mulan, the specter of Mulan that we've been talking about so much over the course of these months and just now, you actually watched this thing.
Yes, because it is finally the beginning of December.
Yes.
Mulan, the 2020 version, is released to Disney Plus
Yes, normal.
without a premium add-on.
Yep.
Here. So didn't have to pay $30, just had to wait 30 days.
All right. So of course the question is, if you had to have paid the premium for this, would you have?
Well, clearly I didn't.
And you know what I mean. Do you think it was worth the premium?
For me, no. For an individual, no. For
Okay.
a family, I would say yes.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of where Disney's thoughts probably lied when they decided to put it up for premium. That
You're probably right.
if we're gonna put it at $30, $29.99, $30, you're buying it for a family, which would spend probably $30 anyways or more to go see it in the theater. So makes sense. I can see their logic going for it. Does it work for me, an individual, to have bought it? No. But the film itself, I think probably would have been worth at least a ticket of admission, probably discount day in normal movie time. But
Yeah.
I had an enjoyable time watching it.
Okay.
Lots of colors. This thing is very colorful and a lot of allegories thrown around into it. It does the kind of mirrored version of duality of both light and dark, the good path, the bad path, with Mulan and the introduction of a new character, the sorceress, and how the inner chi within one's warrior can affect their outcome. Yes, they do a lot of this.
Yeah, a lot of this.
I can see where they're going. It seems well written, like from a story structure standpoint, and from a visual standpoint. I like what they did as well. A lot of the camera work. Anne Caro, I think, was the director. I really like the way she moved the camera around, all the colors, the visualization, the different lenses chosen for when they do. I don't want to call it force vision, but the chi activation.
Sure.
Really hitting on those visual cues. And I want to see what she does next time, because this isn't quite that film that hits all the buttons.
I was going to say that it feels like there's a butt coming.
But there's always a butt coming. It's always at the end.
It's always at the end.
And the but is that while it has all the elements there and all the pieces are there to make a good story, from scene to scene to scene, it just doesn't quite click. They do enough to make it their own. I will say that. It does not feel like a straight rip that some people were kind of worried about. So it does feel like its own Mulan, and they definitely push hard for it. And then there's different elements like, oh, we did this thing with this character, or we gave this line to this person, or we took this song, broke it down, and gave it amongst these people, or put this song, took the essence of it, and put it into this monologue. So it's there. The Mulan you like is there. It's just, I think that might be the dissonance of, because you know the cartoon version so well, because it is a favorite amongst our generation, that putting it into a live action, you're kind of waiting for those beats to happen, and when they don't happen quite right as you would want them to happen, you kind of immediately give a sour taste in your mouth or in your mind.
So it sounds like it's the flip side. It's the flip side of the problem with the Lion King adaptation that we both had, which was it's too close, and because of how close it is, you're missing what the magic of the original. So, like, do you think that if both of these approaches, if doing something different enough like Mulan and doing something too close like Lion King, both of those have issues. Do you think there's a happy medium somewhere in the middle between those that maybe Disney just hasn't hit yet?
Yes, the happy medium would be Maleficent, where you tell the same story but from a different perspective.
Okay.
And I think that's the bread and butter that they're missing, which kind of Maleficent started this whole
Yeah.
thing, where
Mhm.
it was told her Sleeping Beauty, but told from Maleficent's perspective. And they've been trying to
Yeah.
slowly recreate that kind of magic in these live action Disney retellings, that it misses the point that even going back to Alice in Wonderland, or yeah, Alice in
Yeah.
Wonderland with
Yeah.
Johnny Depp and
Yeah.
Mia Wachowski, that wasn't Alice in Wonderland. Alice's first time in Wonderland, that was technically her second time, and they point on that. So that's technically a different perspective of her going back to Wonderland.
Yeah.
And because I want to say some studio executive says just do the same thing, it does kind of miss on that.
Yeah.
I think the Aladdin remake is probably the better version of the close adaptation,
Okay.
because it is different enough to where I enjoy it.
Mhm.
And Will Smith does his own spin enough from Robin Williams that it's different enough to where you can see them as two separate genies, and it's
Mhm.
not like you're trying to directly rip
Right.
or directly imitate.
So it sounds like the line that you want them to walk is basically like follow the spirit, the feeling, the spirit and feeling of the original, but also put a spin on it so that way it seems like it's not just the same story retold.
Right. And that's kind of what you get here with Mulan,
Mhm.
is that it's the exact same spirit, the exact same elements. It's just something not quite hitting directly with me for a nostalgia effect.
Yeah,
But,
I would say it's
but it's
got the
still a
second thing, but
really
not the
good
spirit, is what it sounds like.
right, but it's still a really good film
Right, for what it is.
for what it is.
But yeah, it seemed like the reaction I saw a lot of people when it first was released that did pony up the premium to watch it was that they wanted more of the spirit of the original. They wanted the music, they wanted the songs, they
Yeah,
wanted
there's no
Mushu.
musical in this.
Right. It's not a musical. There's no Mushu at all. So it's like you're missing some of the key things that made that movie so well liked.
Right, but that's also so well liked from a child's perspective
And yeah, they are trying to
of
make this
the
thing a
talking
big sweeping.
animals, of
Yeah.
the physical gags.
Right. When you jump up from G to PG-13, you're going to have to change some things.
Right.
But yeah, okay. So it
But
was just okay.
it was okay, but like on the better side of okay,
Mhm.
rather than the negative side.
So it
Where
sounds like you
I
enjoyed
could
this more than The Lion King.
I watched it twice.
Okay. Okay.
I watched it and then skipped a day and then watched it again because I felt like I'd missed some stuff. And I think on the second viewing, I caught a lot more than I missed on the first time,
Okay.
especially some illusions going back and forth, the phoenix, the camera work, the colors, some of the little dialogue and characters.
Mhm.
So maybe like because the first time like you're watching it fresh eyes and you're like trying to compare it, but not in your mind, not trying to compare it.
Right.
But then when you see it as for what it is, like what it wants to be,
Mhm.
it's a good film for what it wants to be.
You can enjoy it on its own terms instead of just
Yes,
constantly comparing it.
right. And I
Okay.
think that's something that most people need to get away from, is trying to compare it.
I think it's impossible though. I
Oh no,
mean,
it definitely is. That's
yeah,
why
the
get
idea of
away
them
from it.
even the idea of them even it's the same thing for every reboot and remake is the fact that they're doing that. They know they're welcoming comparisons to the original.
Mhm.
It's impossible not to unless you're rebooting something that's 50 years old. But if you're rebooting something that's 20 years old, you're definitely going to invite the comparisons.
Well, that's why around 30 years is probably the good sweet spot. Because like with Black Beauty that I talked with last year or last
Mhm.
week,
Just
last year,
long enough for it to be
just
out of the
long enough to
mind.
be a good reintroduction to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So to stream it.
Well, yeah, you have to stream it now.
Yeah, no, not a choice.
Not disappointed I didn't miss out, because I
Mhm.
feel like there's no real zeitgeist around it. And I think that might be something that Disney will, I want to say won't take into effect, but probably should when announcing their upcoming slate, that if it's put on streaming, you might miss its zeitgeist, but they may ignore it for one reason, and that's because the television show The Mandalorian.
Fair enough.
Oh, and with that, let's go to TV.
Well, before we hit TV, I just want to mention real briefly. I also caught up on a movie from earlier in 2020.
Oh, yes, you did.
I finally watched Palm Springs, Hulu's own. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it. I'm going to save a lot what I have to say for the year-end wrap-up podcast, where I'm sure we will both discuss it.
I can tell you it will be on my list at least.
Yeah, it will likely be on my list as well because I loved this movie.
Due to process of elimination of how many films you watched too.
Not a whole lot. Just real briefly, I really, really liked it. I think I didn't see the twists coming in both your take on this podcast and the written review you wrote for the site. I think you were very good at avoiding the spoilers.
I tried specifically to avoid the spoilers.
And so I did not know what was happening when the ball starts rolling in that movie, which I also am not going to spoil it for anybody because what happens in this thing, you have to see it in order to really understand the inner workings and like machine, like the cogs spinning inside the machine of this film. It just works so well. The script is brilliant. The performance.
J.K. Simmons is a delight.
J.K. Simmons is the best part of that movie by far. It's just such a fun thing, but it also is a really, really deep, like well thought out examination of philosophies on life in a way, and how you can compare and contrast philosophies on living with people who are close to you and how that may change. Really, really well done. I can't imagine. I should have watched it back when it came out.
I tried to tell you, but
I didn't have Hulu at the time, so I had to wait until I had access to Hulu again. So
that's right, because you left it for
I bailed on it for YouTube and bailed on YouTube.
Well, yeah, because when it came out back in like March and April, you switched because
the Sinclair
baseball
stuff.
And Sinclair stuff
didn't end up working out for me though. So I really had a good time with it. We'll talk about more on the year-end wrap-up podcast, where I'm sure we'll be able to get into spoilers on it because we can't really hear.
Yes. I also didn't get to it on our write-up, which if you want to see my non-spoiler review write-up,
yes, it's on
look it up at mediaboatpodcast.com.
mediaboatpodcast.com. Okay, so now let's move on to television. We always start television with the sports corner. Sports happens.
Yes, they did.
Constantly. Still happening, believe it or not, even though your favorite sports are over. Football still goes on, and fantasy football playoffs have started if you're a competitor in one of those leagues.
Yes, if I could put fantasy football as my number one video game, I would every year.
Technically, you can. I feel like if we're allowing certain things that we're allowing this year, I don't see really why you can't. That being said, it would be kind of boring if fantasy football was your game of the year every year.
Well, yes, that's also why I don't include it, because it's something that continues every year. It's not beholden to a single year. That being said,
yes,
holla, it's fantasy football time.
Yeah, it's happening.
3 leagues, 3 playoffs, literally biting my nails on the last game because I won by less than a point thanks to the Ravens defense and Zeke not getting the ball in the last 5 minutes. Literally, I was just watching that score of Zeke scores a touchdown. My score goes up, or my score goes down because the Ravens defense is detrimental. I was like,
what a pain.
Oh, it is. I mean, yeah. So I got the bye in one league. Okay. I got the division win in another league. Okay. And I scraped into the playoffs at the 5th seed in my 3rd league. And so the next 3 weeks are the crunch time of fantasy football.
Yeah.
Oh, so excited. All year has come to it. We will have a complete season. And just thinking back to when we didn't have it. Oh, the pain. All those mock drafts.
Yeah, they're mocking you. That's how mock
Ah,
drafts they
now
are.
who's the one mocking now?
Anyway, but fantasy football isn't the only way to enjoy football. College football also is trucking along. Big Ten championship has been announced between the Ohio State and Northwestern.
Oh, right. Yes, I forgot. It's always the
The Ohio State. That will take place on December 19th.
Right. And Ohio State makes it with only 5 games played.
Wow.
They are currently 5-0.
That
3
would
of
do
their
it.
games have been canceled due to COVID concerns, including the upcoming game, Ohio State versus Michigan State. Not Michigan State. Jim Harbaugh and Michigan versus the Ohio State, which is supposed to be this Saturday, but will not be played due to COVID concerns.
There you go.
That being said, the Big Ten decided that even if the Ohio State lost on Saturday, they would have been in the championship game anyway. So they just kind of like scooted things along.
Yeah, when you're
and say
undefeated
you don't
like
need
that,
to play that game, I guess.
Yeah.
That being said, Jim Harbaugh, head coach at Michigan, should be on a hot seat, but there are rumors that he will be signed back for another 3 years. Who knows?
Who knows? We will see how that goes.
Yep.
Meanwhile, in hockey, there's a bit of a shakeup involving the NHL. The realignment into 4 divisions seems to have resulted in a Canada-only division, where it's all the Canada teams into one little pocket.
Yes, in order to not have, say, a cross contamination between countries' borders.
Yes.
For the 2021 season, an all Canada division will be implemented.
Yep.
So that's Vancouver, Calgary, Ottawa, Toronto.
Mhm.
Oh God, I'm blanking on the other 2.
Is that not it?
Oh no, there's more. There's 6. Hold on. I want to get this
Montreal.
right. Yes. Montreal. Okay.
Just looking it up, folks.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. It is Calgary, Edmonton.
Mhm.
That's the one I keep forgetting.
Edmonton.
Yes, Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver, and Winnipeg
Oh, Winnipeg.
are going to be its own Canadian division.
Got it.
That means all the other divisions have to realign too, meaning we'll have a complete West Coast division with the Ducks, Coyotes, Avalanche, Stars, Kings, Sharks, Blues, and Vegas Golden Knights in the West. In the East, technically the Northeast, because it's Boston, Buffalo, New Jersey, New York, Philly, Pittsburgh, and Washington. Literally just that corner gets its own segment.
There's a lot of teams up there.
And then everyone else gets thrown into the mix. Stretching all the way from Chicago down to Tampa Bay.
Don't you love the United States? Anyway, well, that sounds like weird. But yes, the Players Association is currently aiming for a January 13th start date for the hockey season to come.
Yes, we had previously noted that they were trying for a January 1st. Looks like they're not going to make it. No. So they're trying for the 13th, especially with this new realignment. You need to put out new schedules too.
Right.
And I think they're also trying to decide if they're going to have fans or not.
Yeah, I think that that'll be like we talked about before.
On a state-by-state basis.
Probably be on a state-by-state basis. Oh, right. Anything else in sports we want to add before we move on from the sports corner?
Nope. I am good to move from the sports corner.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Yeah. Logan Paul beat up an ex-MLB player.
I'm never surprised when I see his name pop up with the stupid things he's doing. He's fighting Floyd Mayweather? Apparently?
Yes.
Mayweather. Sorry. Merriweather.
Yes.
I was like, that's a bad idea.
That's what they said about this second fight, whatever fight number this is for him. But hey, he came out swinging. He came out ready. He also tried to call out Conor McGregor to fight him, but
Let's see how that worked.
Yeah, see how that worked. All
All
right.
right.
TV news.
Let's talk about our first story here in television news proper. We're talking about a familiar face on a familiar channel. Let me finish typing for a second here. All right. So what we're talking about here takes us to MSNBC news channel, known for making you lean into your television a little too far. They, of course, are right off of an election year full of coverage. The next year, not an election year, and will probably be a little lighter. That being said, they're ready with a new network president who is none other than the very familiar name and face of Rashida Jones.
Not that Rashida Jones.
Not that Rashida Jones. Let's make that clear. Not the one you're thinking of.
No, but it did get that Rashida Jones trending on Twitter when this was announced.
I bet she was confused. She was like, wait, what? So not that Rashida Jones will succeed Phil Griffin as president of MSNBC. The network announced on Monday. Griffin had been with MSNBC since it launched almost 25 years ago and has served as president since back in 2008. Jones will be the first Black executive to lead one of the major cable news networks. She has led breaking news and event coverage at the network, including election night and presidential debates. One of Jones's biggest challenges will be to retain viewership in a non-presidential election year, and following the departure of Donald Trump from the White House, which I'm sure was a big ratings boon for network news. The network
got me to watch.
Sure, yeah. The network and its rivals saw record viewership in November of 2020, with coverage of election night and its aftermath. But there's some expectation that those levels will abate when Joe Biden moves into the White House.
This, of course, is assuming Joe Biden does eventually move into the White House.
Which, yeah. So yeah, basically what we're looking at right here is a big question mark, because if the new network news is new, the news networks, geez, I'm having trouble with this story, are going to be looking and comparing these presidencies and being like, why isn't something disastrous happening every week? Like what happened?
Try every day.
Yeah, exactly. Like what happened
every hour.
The last 4 years where we had something constantly to talk about. What are we going to talk about? And so we'll see.
As SNL put it so poignantly like 3 weeks ago, what am I going to talk to my friends about if I can't bash Trump?
Trust me, there will be things to talk about. Nothing stops here. We've talked about this already on this podcast before. But yeah, it's going to be different, and they're going to have to adapt, and they're going to have to come up with new ways to do news coverage.
Right. And 25 years at a place and being president since 2008, that's a long time for Phil Griffin to be heading MSNBC.
Yeah, that's a long ass time. So, hey, he gets to move on, and new leadership gets to freshen up the place a little bit.
Younger audience.
Yeah, possibly.
Let's try that.
Let's try that. All right. Speaking of trying new things, the Emmys are going to try a few more things when they're prepping for their next award season.
Can one of them be for podcasting?
No, we cannot get an Emmy for podcasting. Television Academy has instituted some rule changes for next year's awards, and along with some standard housekeeping and restructuring, they've changed the rules for consideration for TV movies, since so many movies intended for theaters ended up being released on television instead in 2020. This means any movies that were forced to play on television will have to choose whether they want to try for an Emmy or an Oscar. Any film placed on the MPAA streaming platform for consideration will automatically be disqualified for Emmy consideration. So if you're a big Netflix release, say, and Netflix has poured in money for your release and you want Oscar buzz around it, you can only submit it for the Oscar. You're not going to get it in television movie at the Emmys.
Right. Or you could submit it for TV for movie. or movie made for
Yeah.
TV and
But
make
then
it there. You
you
can't double
can't
dip.
double dip. Yeah. So you can't also go for the Oscar buzz. Plus, they've also created a category at the Emmys for outstanding stunt performance by an individual or team in a drama, comedy, limited series, or TV movie. So finally, stunt performers will be recognized with an Emmy for their hard work.
Yes, they have an Emmy for outstanding stunt coordination,
Mm-hmm.
but not for the individual performance or
Performers
team.
themselves. Makes sense. Speaking of sketch, though, I misspoke because I was reading the next line, but that's also getting a little shake up. The arenas of talk shows and sketch shows will be a little bit more competitive next year. Since Outstanding Variety Talk Series and Outstanding Variety Sketch Series have been combined into just one category, Outstanding Variety Series.
If
That
this
means the
sounds
likes,
familiar,
yes,
that's
because that's the
because
way it
this
used to
was in
be.
20, that's what it used to be in 2015 before it split.
Right.
Now
So
they
this
now like
means,
a freeway, they're just going to rejoin like this. We're going
yeah.
up.
So this basically means you're going to see the late night shows up against the sketch shows. So your last week tonight's will be right up against Saturday Night Live, which has not been the case in recent years.
Right, and they're doing this because for Variety Talk Series, there were some complaints. I'll throw those in quotes there about a talk series being either a weekly basis or a nightly basis. How there was
Right.
somewhat of an unfair advantage.
You could say
Well,
that.
now there's no longer an advantage if you got 60 different variety categories going against each other.
Yeah. Finally, the next year we'll see the launch of the award for Outstanding Limited or Anthology Series. So anthology shows that aren't serial programming will compete against limited series. So there won't be any conversation like there have been in the drama category about, is this technically a limited series because of the number of episodes? Like they're going to eliminate that from the conversation.
Right. It this is meant to simplify things and
Yeah.
to give everyone an even footing. But when
Yeah.
you have, I think it was like something of 290 submissions into just those two categories, that's a lot, and something's going to fall by the wayside real quickly.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be even harder for some of these shows to get recognized for sure. So the eligibility period for next year's Emmys will be from June 1st, 2020 through May 31st, 2021. Nominations will be announced on July 13th, and the 73rd Emmys broadcast will happen on a date that is yet to be determined sometime in September of 2021.
Because who knows where we'll be by that time.
Yeah, who knows what it's going to look like. All right, that is it for television news. Let's talk about television that you've watched. You got your hands on some streaming services that you had not previously had. You look like you have some NBC, you have some Peacock stuff on here. You have some Apple TV Plus stuff on here. What do you want to start with?
Let's go with the Peacock real quick. Because
Okay.
why not talk about reboots and reimagining since we talked about Mulan earlier?
Why don't we?
Okay. Let me strap in. Let me get to school on time. Let me skip my class because I have been saved by the bell
Yes.
again.
2020.
2020 version. So the first 5 minutes and basically opening gag sketch of this show is a direct homage throwback to what Saved by the Bell was, which was this very steady, I'm saying that in like the purest of sense, coordinated, everyone hit their mark for a TV show because it was in late 80s, early 90s, and very of its time.
Sure.
And you had your typical jocks wearing jock stuff, cheerleaders wearing cheerleader stuff, cool dudes wearing their cool dude stuff. You had all their cliques, and they were clearly defined just by looking at them, people walking by. That's the first 5 minutes, and that's kind of how it opens. But it immediately does a record skip, halts it, and flips the script because you don't see those characters again until the end of the episode as it flips straight to a different school, an inner city school,
Mhm.
that is being closed down. And so these inner city kids have to be bussed out to Bayside High School in the rich preppy school.
Mhm.
And what do you get when you have the haves and the have not colliding together?
Hilarity.
And hijinks. And a good recipe for a good show. I will
Okay.
say that I enjoyed this reboot. They do enough of the new characters and new camera styles to make it fresh, to make it modern with modern conveniences like a cell phone. Um, they definitely lean into it being a modernized version of Saved by the Bell.
Yeah.
But there are also cameo appearances to the previous cast thrown in, specifically Mario Lopez as the gym teacher slash football coach, as he, I want to say, is featured in just about every episode at
Yeah.
some point or another, which does make you wonder, why do we keep focusing on him?
Why not?
But he's, while he does appear in every episode, it's not overbearing enough to where they try and like focus on him, the star, but rather the new cast and how the new cast interacts with each other. And by the third episode, I really like the chemistry of these characters. I like what they're doing with them, and I like how modern and fresh it feels. And it does feel like a good high school show. But the one wrinkle in it is Zach Morris, former protagonist of Saved by the Bell, is now governor of California somehow.
Okay.
Yeah. And so his son is also attending Bayside High School. And that's where the connection comes from, the past to the present, and how they get them to show up during homecoming and
Hmm.
have, in one episode, a reunion of sorts. But it's just one episode and it's not totally overbearing. But I really like the interesting angle that they're going with Saved by the Bell of the inner city kids mixing with the Heidi, toity poity rich kids.
Yeah.
Because
You
it
get
does
that.
provide that direct head butting against the wall of, I'm used to doing this. No, that's not how life works.
Hmm.
Real life butting up against the fantasy that is basically TV high school, and where everything is either fictional or could only happen in a rich setting.
Yeah, it allows you to add layers on top of the existing show. Like you get to do the stuff that the original show did, but you get to add like actual stakes to these things instead of the very limited stakes that you had in the original series.
Right. And so I liked it. I could see it getting a second season. I could
Yeah,
also see it not getting a second season.
certainly seems like people are enjoying it. I've heard nothing but positive things about it. I haven't pulled the trigger because I'm not doing the paid version of Peacock. I only have the free, and
Okay.
they paywall everything but the pilot.
Well, we'll talk after the podcast, I guess.
So, but yeah, I did see some positive things being said about it. I have not tried the pilot yet, but yeah, it seems like a real smart way to reboot it instead of just doing the same thing over again, to kind of add, like I said, those layers of complexity, because you
Right.
have to be more complex in 2020.
And like I said, they do that very tongue in cheek opening sequence. But then after the credits roll, it immediately switches and you're like, okay,
Right.
this is what the show actually is
Mm-hmm.
and how these two worlds collide. We need to set up the fake world of TV rich kid life and then immediately smash cut it to inner city, how actual, I want to say, Netflix looks, that a Netflix looking high school, um, and kind of smash those two worlds together and why they get smashed together and how they try and keep them together,
Yeah.
and also how they kind of rip it apart, keep it together, flowing stakes. I enjoyed it. I could see it going either way though, if it gets renewed or not.
Especially with Peacock. I mean, they've already canceled their a couple of their biggest tent poles already.
Mhm.
So it doesn't seem clear right now what NBC wants to commit to and what they don't with this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see them continuing with this because they have a set pre-built. So a lot of that construction, a lot of that cost is already done. So it could be cheaper to make going forward.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, depends if they do a coronavirus thing with it or not, if they try and jump it.
I hope they don't.
You only have these kids for 3 years, 3 high school years, until you get to Saved by the Bell, the college years.
Oh man, what if they did that? All right. Okay, what else did you watch? You also dipped your toe into Apple TV Plus.
So for the longest time, I did not have Apple TV Plus
Right.
because it was
Yes.
not available on the Xbox.
But now it is, and I shared my family plan with my family, and you're my
Yes,
family.
I did not
So
realize that Xbox finally supported Apple,
yeah.
or Apple supports Xbox. But now I have access to Apple TV Plus,
Mhm.
and I think that solidifies the entire streaming catalog for me
Got
now.
them all. Yep, you
Got
got
them all.
everything.
I am officially the streaming master, catching them all.
Yep.
And so first I took your advice and I watched Ted Lasso.
Okay.
But I'm not no, but I'm going to save it for the end of the year because I'm feeling this is gonna be on your end of the year list.
Yes, it
Probably
is
gonna
on
be
my end
on
of the
my
year
end of the
list.
year list.
Okay.
I need to
Well,
finish it.
I think you can do what I did with Palm Springs. At least give me the temperature. Take your temperature on it. What do you think?
You were kind of spot on. It was really up my alley. I really
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed it. I was able
Yeah.
to pull other people in to enjoy it as well.
Oh no, this is something that I'm not surprised that yes, your entire household would have had a piece of enjoyment out of it.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is a little slow in the first episode,
Yeah.
but I think either third episode or whenever the banquet was,
Yes.
that
Yes.
the auction, that is
Yes.
the episode that sold me on the show and wanted me
Mm-hmm.
to keep watching it to the end.
Because it ups the stakes. Again,
It does.
stakes, because it
Yes.
introduces
A
actual
face
potential
villain,
drama.
a face of the
Right.
villain of
Yes.
your stakes that you're trying to raise against.
And then yeah, the one that starts the ball, and then the ball just keeps going after that.
Mm-hmm. Coach Beard is the house favorite.
Yes,
We
he's
love
great.
everything about him.
He's wonderful.
And yes, we will definitely talk about this
Yes.
during our end of the year wrap up.
Yes, we will.
Probably from what I've seen so far, the best thing. Then again, I've only watched 2 things. Well, technically 3. Because I started the Mariah Carey Christmas special,
Okay.
got about 10 minutes into it, but then had to stop and do other stuff.
Fair enough. But you did watch something else that's kind of on my radar because it does seem like to be something that potentially I could enjoy, but I have heard no reactions to it whatsoever, so I have not tried yet. And that would be
Mythic Quest, Raven's Banquet.
yes.
This is Bill Lawrence, I want to say.
Is he involved in this? I know he's involved in Ted Lasso.
Oh, okay. No, he's not involved in this. That's right.
So
Bill
this is
Lawrence is
somebody
Ted
else.
Lasso.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just watched those back to back. So
Yeah.
no, but this is Rob McElhenney and
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Day of It's Always Sunny fame.
Yeah.
And this is their take on a video game company a la Blizzard
Right.
with an MMO style video game
The
that's very
titular
popular.
Mythic Quest Raven's Banquet, right?
Mythic Quest is the name of the game. Raven's Banquet is their launch DLC
Okay.
of the first episode, and just kind of run with it for the
Sure.
but I can see definite hesitations on multiple sides of this because while I did find it funny at times, it is also cringeworthy and
Yeah.
definitely butts up ahead with that kind of style of comedy that It's Always Sunny is known for. That really in your face, we're clearly making a joke about this, and then we're going to beat the dead horse of said joke
Mm-hmm.
continuously until you get our point and then we're gonna make one more joke about it at the very end of the episode.
Of course.
Um, Ashley Birch is in this, which me and both
Okay.
favorite. We like.
All right.
Not in it entirely. She is the second build on it behind Rob McElhenney,
Mm-hmm.
but her role in it is not one of the upper tier roles. She's a video game tester.
Okay.
So while she is second build, that might just be alphabetical.
Yeah, my guess would be yes. Quick question.
Yes.
How inside baseball does this get? What I mean by that is like how much we happen to be people who have a lot of prior knowledge about video game studios, about how video games are made. How much of that is necessary to enjoy this? Or is it light enough on that stuff where you could go in not knowing anything about video games and still have like a sitcom to watch? Like, how inside
It's
does it get?
light enough
Mhm.
to where if you've ever been in an office setting and have dealt with office politics
It works as a
of
workplace show.
creatives versus um, directives,
Uh-huh.
management,
Yeah.
then yes, it works on that level. It does have its own separate level of geekdom to it, where
Mhm.
it does at times reference either story play, gameplay mechanics. One of the first jokes about it is the ability to create things in an MMO, and the only thing people will create are penises,
Of course.
because that's
Naturally.
the first thing you want to do with it, naturally. So yes, there is low hanging fruit like that, but there is also burst in highbrow humor.
Okay.
Not enough to make an impact, but definitely enough to notice that they are trying highbrow humor
Mhm.
while at the same time hitting the low hanging fruit. So it is a
Yeah.
wide range of comedy that doesn't quite land on one scale.
And that maybe gives me hesitation.
And I
So,
think that's what a lot of people might be hesitant on.
yeah, what you know about kind of my feelings about television generally, do you think this is something I would jive with, or do you think it would just be too little
I
out
think you
there?
might drive with it till about
Uh-huh.
episode 6 when they do a specific episode you would absolutely hate.
Great, awesome. That's what I want to hear. Because yeah, like I said, it had been on my radar because it's about the video game industry.
Mhm.
And I remember for a long time people would talk about like they should make a show about this setting because there's a lot of stuff to mine here. And when it finally happened, I was like, okay, did anybody watch it? And that's the thing, because it was buried on Apple TV, nobody was talking about it.
Well, it was behind the Apple TV paywall that nobody was watching it.
So that now that there are a few more things on Apple TV, they've gotten the ball rolling with that service a little bit more,
Mhm.
and more people have access to it. I'm glad now that I have some frame of reference. But yeah, I might give it a try. I don't know. I might try it out because I was actually had my finger hovering over it on the iPad app last week and almost committed, and then I chose not to. But yeah, I've definitely been thinking about it, so maybe we'll see.
Right. I put it on my watch list because it was the
Mhm.
only thing that I recognized in name only that, oh
Yes,
yeah, I remember this, the video game comedy.
right.
I should probably
Beyond,
I should probably watch it. So
yeah,
because it was the only other thing that I had recognized, that's why I watched it.
yeah, beyond Ted Lasso and Snoopy in Space, there's not a whole lot on that service that's like, I need to watch this now. Like,
Right. Other stuff can wait. Like I know For All Mankind is on my
yeah,
list,
yeah,
but it's like I don't have it queued up yet because I know that's like another drama slog that I may or may not
right.
get into.
Makes sense.
But because this is a half-hour comedy, I think you might enjoy it
There
more.
might be some things that I could hold on to, but I'll give it a
Right.
try and see how it works. But
I know
don't
there's
expect
one
that on
episode in
my
there you
viewing.
will like.
Yeah.
One episode in particular I'm thinking of that you will indeed love,
Okay.
but you kind of got to get to it first.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about on the television front before we move
Well,
on?
so both those, Ted Lasso and Mythic Quest,
Mhm.
stream it because it's the
Oh
only way
yeah,
you can view
obviously.
it.
That's why we don't do it for television. We just say, "Hey, did you like it? No, yes."
Right. I mean, it's specific humor.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of highbrow, a little bit of low hanging. It does run a range of humor, so definitely give it a shot. If you don't like it, at least give it 2, maybe 3 episodes.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how they land on it.
Right.
All
I'm just
right.
saying because they're half hour, they're just gonna run real fast.
Yeah. Well, I didn't watch anything else. So on that note, we can now move on to cancellations and
All right. What am I no
renewals.
longer watching?
Well, you're still watching Blood of Zeus on Netflix. They're bringing back that for a second season.
Am I?
I, Probably not. AMC somehow has resurrected Fear the Walking Dead for another season. That will be its 7th. Superstore, just like many retail stores in COVID, has been canceled and will be shutting down its doors after its 6th season on NBC.
I think that's its current 6th season.
Believe you're right.
So
Which, you
yeah,
know
the
what?
last spring episodes will be its last.
Seemed like it kind of ran its course. So I'm not super surprised by this decision. This allows kind of another show to kind of go through the NBC churn.
So I'm kind of going through this on the Peacock streaming service.
Mm-hmm.
Episode or not episode. I'm season 3 into it,
Uh-huh.
and I'm already wondering, like, man, are they kind of running out of ideas here? They keep shuffling characters' positions.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do in a retail setting because, like, it's one thing to do a workplace comedy. Obviously, they made somehow The Office work for how many years it ran. But
7.
if there aren't, yeah, exactly.
10.
But there aren't enough things, you eventually hit a wall there. So, surprised it lasted this long. Honestly, I never really cared for it.
Well, I guess it was one of those things where I enjoyed it, but never enough to stick with it, which is why I'm going back through it now that I guess the whole series is on Peacock.
Yeah. All right. Netflix is bringing or is calling it quits on Feel Good after a second season.
Its upcoming second season will be its last.
Yeah. So you won't feel good for too much longer. The CW is bringing back Penn and Teller Fool Us for a 7th season. That's been on forever.
It's cheap to make.
I bet.
It is cheap to make. As long as you keep bringing in magicians.
Yep. You can keep going.
Or illusionists, or whoever you want to call them.
The aforementioned For All Mankind on Apple TV Plus will be coming back for a 3rd season.
That is ahead of its 2nd season in January, I believe.
Netflix has canceled Hoops. I wonder what that show's about. After just 1 season.
Hula hoops.
Oh, okay. Not what I was expecting.
That's because it's not. It's about basketball.
I know. I'm playing along with your bit. HBO is bringing back How To with John Wilson for a 2nd season. And last but certainly not least, Disney XD canceled DuckTales. It's the reboot of DuckTales. Woohoo. After just 3 seasons of that show.
Wait,
not
you
super
said canceled?
Surprised. Yes, canceled.
Oh, then it's DuckTales. Boo-hoo.
Boo-hoo, exactly. I'm not super surprised by this. Disney is notorious for canceling their animated shows after 3 or 4.
Especially on Disney XD and not proper Disney Channel.
Yeah, even though DuckTales premiered on Disney and was moved to XD for its 2nd season. Yeah, not super surprised here. A lot of the internet is kind of up in arms about this decision, but yeah, this is just how they do business. They get 60-something episodes in the can, and then they're like, all right, we're good.
Right, and this is because they had announced a Darkwing spinoff, a Chip and Dale's reboot.
So clearly they can move the staff over to these other projects. Won't be a problem for the people. They'll still have jobs.
Yep.
All right, that's it for cancellations and renewals. Let's move into a little part of the show that we call Death's Unhappy Face. There's a couple of deaths this week, but they're kind of big. Chuck Yeager, the name sounds familiar. It's because he was the first person to exceed the speed of sound in a jet aircraft, died at age 97. So lived a full life of breaking barriers.
Haha.
Yep. Then we also have Jason Slater, age 49. A rock bassist, was in the bands Third Eye Blind, Snake River Conspiracy, and Ruhum. Not really sure how you pronounce that last one, but yes, a bass.
A
well-known bass
semi-charmed
player.
kind of life.
Oh, but yeah, 49. That's young. All right. That's it for deaths and cancellations and all that jazz in television. So that means we get to move on to music. And I pass it over to you.
And we always start music with the Billboard, and we start the Billboard with the Hot 100. And your hottest song in the land is Still Mood by 24 Golden.
Yep, still.
Featuring Ian Dior.
Still.
Because it's not Christmas time yet. Or is it? As number 2 is All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey.
You called it that this was the week it would start, and sure enough, it has begun.
It popped up. There it is. Always right on time to tell me that it's Christmas time. Congratulations, Mariah Carey, for making a house song. And by that, I mean a song you can buy a house with. At number 3, Positions by Ariana Grande.
Mm-hmm.
At 4, Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree by Brenda Lee. Yes,
yep,
that song.
Your other Christmas entry this week.
That's how you know it's Christmas. And at number 5, Ducati by Bad Bunny and Jay Cortez.
As for Bad Bunny, capping off of a big year, as we mentioned, Spotify's most played artist globally this year.
Yep. As for your Billboard 200, your albums chart, starting off with a big year still, Bad Bunny with El Último Tour del Mundo. For everyone who doesn't speak Spanish, that's the final tour of the world.
Final world tour, I would guess.
Well, yes. I mean, if you want to flip it around and make it correct.
Yeah. Regardless, that's probably a live album from Bad Bunny.
Well, it's number 1, so people like Bad Bunny.
Yep.
Much to the chagrin of our number 2, Plastic Hearts by Miley Cyrus.
Yep. Which is a rock album.
3, B by BTS.
Yep.
4, Positions by Ariana Grande. And at number 5, Shoot for the Stars, Aim for the Moon by Pop Smoke. If you didn't like any of those albums, we have new releases.
All right. What do we got this week?
I don't know what you got, but here are the new releases. What to Look For in the Summer by Belle and Sebastian.
Both of them.
To Roy Tupo by Boris and Merzbow.
Okay.
We have Styles We Paid For by Guided by Voices.
Mm-hmm.
Man on the Moon 3, The Chosen by Kid Cudi. Yes, that Kid Cudi.
This was surprise announced earlier this week. So big kind of bombshell from Kid Cudi, who we last saw in that Kids See Ghosts album with Kanye West.
Right. Last year, I believe.
2 years ago.
2 years ago? Wow.
I'm going to say that was 2 years ago.
I think you're right, because Kanye was running for president.
Because 2019 was it was different.
Right. We also have Silver Linings by Less Than Drake. Think of Spring by M. Ward. Panther Rotate by OCs.
Rotate this panther here. Hold on. There we go.
And We Will Always Love You. I'm sorry. I should probably sing that, right?
No, probably not.
We
No.
will always
we're good.
Love you.
We're fine. We didn't.
I apologize for your ears.
Didn't need that.
That's from The Avalanches.
Yes.
Also from the bowels of my diaphragm.
The bowels of your bowels, turns out.
Yeah. Sure. Bellowing out the bowels.
Bowel bellows.
That's the name of my next album. Bowel Bellows.
Anyways, please let's move on.
Let's move on to no music story, but a bunch of bits.
Music bits.
All right, we start with an Ohio nightclub being cited for COVID-19 violations. after 500 people wanted to attend a Trey Songz concert.
That's a lot of people at a Trey Songz concert.
That's the most people in his room in years.
Yeah, needless to say, this continues the 2020 trend of concerts where concerts should not happen.
And continuing the trend of you can't tell me what to do, I'm going to do it anyways.
Yep.
Or I'm going to do it because you told me I can't do it.
So
You know,
congratulations.
kid attitude.
So congratulations to Trey Songz causing another super spreader event.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Wait, no, boo-hoo.
Yes, again.
Oh, we also have a boogie with the hoodie arrested for weapon and drug possession.
Sound familiar?
Yeah, doesn't he have a weapon guy and a drug guy?
Apparently not.
But
Seems
he
like we
was like,
keep running into this problem.
I was always wondering what was in the hoodie.
That hoodie. Yeah, now we know.
Now we know it's weapons and drugs. All following end of the year wrap-ups, Roddy Ricch's "The Box" was YouTube's most played song of 2020.
Not surprised here. It was number one for a very long time. So it makes sense that this would be YouTube's number one.
Yep. That number had to come from somewhere.
Sure. Yep.
Chance the Rapper and Jeremiah announced a holiday album this Friday.
Yeah, this was out kind of nowhere. It seemed like they were recording together, and now we know why they were. But Chance has his own issues.
He has 3 of them.
Yes, but more specifically, the next story.
More specifically, Chance the Rapper being sued by ex-manager, citing lackluster album in suit.
So yeah, what this means is that there's a suit from his ex-manager, and in the language of in the text of it, he goes on a rant about how bad Chance the Rapper's last record was. The Next Day, I want to say that thing was called. And yeah, music Twitter was having fun with that because it was also pretty critically disliked when that thing came out. And so to have his own manager kind of go against him, it was kind of a funny moment.
So this is manager saying that album sucked so bad it shouldn't count as one of your albums?
No, I don't know if that's exactly the message that they're trying to deliver. I believe that the suit is for other reasons as well, but use that as an opportunity to trash him.
Okay. Well, speaking of things being trashed, Gwen Stefani is releasing a comeback single titled "Let Me Reintroduce Myself. My name is Stefani. G to the Wen."
No. So I have not listened to this yet. From what I understand, she tries to bring back a little bit of the ska sound that made her famous in No Doubt. But I don't know if it's successful or not in doing so.
But she's just a girl.
It's true. Yeah, I don't know what she's trying to do here. Obviously, she is in a high-profile relationship with voice judge and everybody's favorite country dude, Blake Shelton. So, and I mean that sarcastically. So yeah, she's not in really a position where she needs to relaunch her career, but apparently she thinks it's a good idea.
Well, she's just looking for a sweet escape.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, you're not gonna let me get my third one in?
Nope. Moving on.
All right, this shit's bananas.
There it is. There it is. Okay.
Okay. Bob Dylan
Yes.
sells his entire catalog to Universal Music Publishing.
Yeah, why not?
That includes his latest album of like 3 weeks ago.
I would assume, yes. So yeah, this is kind of par for the course. A lot of these bigger artists are doing this. If they're not like on the other side of it, trying to get their songwriting rights to be their own, they're looking for the big payday. And makes sense. Dylan's kind of old. It makes sense for him to be like, I don't know, just give me a bunch of money for this.
I wonder if that's because his streams aren't being played as much.
No, I don't think
concerts aren't really touring, so there's not a whole lot more from that. Well,
it might be more that is that he can't. Well, I mean, he wasn't really a person who toured a lot, anyways. But it would be a nice little like way to just keep coasting on the money that he has.
Right. We also have Billie Eilish finally canceling a tour that she launched back in March.
Yeah, she had done the thing where she kept pushing back the dates over and over again, and ultimately there's only so far you can push it back. So she just pulled the plug on the whole rest of the tour.
I wonder if this is because she potentially has a new single, or one, no, not potentially. She does have a new single out,
I
which
mean,
means
that's
possible new album.
certainly part of it is that, yeah, from what I understand, she is working on new material. So it would not be, it makes sense that she would be like, let's just wait until all of this is something I can tour on.
That's something Taylor Swift did, where she had to
Exactly.
cancel Lover, and
Exactly.
will be
Except she
touring on
canceled hers
Folklore.
way early as
Well,
opposed to
yes,
Billy. So
well, it's because people actually want to go to a Taylor Swift concert.
I think a lot of people want to go to a Billie Eilish concert. I think you're underestimating the popularity of Billie Eilish. Remember who was number one and number two on the Spotify female artists? It was like Billie was still above Taylor. So
Oh yes, I know that, but
sought
their
after
parents still need to
sought after
drive them to a Billie
tickets.
Eilish concert.
I think you underestimate the variety of people who are into her music. It's not
Let me
just
bash
children.
her.
No.
Damn it.
Anyway.
All right. And lastly, in music bits, probably the biggest story
At
for
least
us
personally, to
personally.
our generation, I think this is a big story.
Oh yes, that's why you put it in the bits, because it only applies to us.
Yeah.
People of a certain age.
Yes.
Wait, no, what's a show called? Men of a Certain
Men
Age
of a
with
certain age. No, it has nothing to do
Ray
with that.
Romano.
No, nothing to do with that. No. We're talking about millennials, specifically millennials who grew up in Southern California.
And specifically millennials who had moms who would only put on a single radio station, because
Yep.
it's the ones moms trusted to
Yes.
not only bleep but also give kid versions
Kid,
of
kid tested, mother
popular
approved.
songs. Yes, if you're wondering why we have Kids Bop, you have Radio Disney to thank for it.
Yeah, it's the Radio Disney, unfortunately.
Yes, Radio Disney and Radio Disney Country will be
Yeah,
shutting down in early
same thing.
2021.
Yeah,
I'm guessing
this
you listen
is.
to a lot of this.
Oh, yeah, no, this was in our car radio constantly. It was the only thing that we had. Well, actually, that's not true. The divide was basically this: if the parents decided, it was the oldie station. If it was the kids, it would be Radio Disney. So if I had my reasoning when I was a kid was is that every once in a while, and I mean maybe like once every month, they would play something off of the soundtrack to the Pokemon movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that was reason enough for me to be like, Dad, turn it to Radio Disney because they might play a Pokemon song. Whereas my sister, of course, that was the station that would play NSYNC and Britney Spears the most, and so that's why she would want Radio Disney on in the car when she was in the car. So yeah, no, it was a constant source of entertainment for us as a family. It was also kind of a neat thing every time we would go to Disneyland and be like, they're in there, and get point at the place that they would record sometimes in Tomorrowland. So it was kind of, yeah, it was just cultural touchstone. I I remember so many like weird little bits about it, like that the number you called was 1888 EARS 018. That was a little jingle for the call in.
Yep.
I would try to call in for contests and would never get through. It'd always just be a busy signal.
Well, I mean, eventually got in through to Radio Disney. I think I got on the air
Oh
once.
yeah, you did. Wow.
Well, it was like one of those like ask a question things.
Yeah, answer the question.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think the answer was answered before I got to go on, but
of course.
I got through.
That's something. But
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, but this was also when you didn't have cell phones and you had to listen to it next to a landline.
right. Yes. Yeah, it was definitely a piece of our childhood. I will miss it, but honestly, I haven't listened
Yes.
to it in a day. Oh,
Landlines. Explain that to your kids.
yeah, but honestly though, I haven't listened to this thing in probably 15 years.
Right. And with streaming now, it's not really a viable thing.
The one
Well,
thing
although I think Pandora still does their streaming for it, right?
I think you're right. Do you remember when they switched with the ESPN network permanently?
Oh,
Remember when one was
710?
710 and one was 1110 and then they swapped?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
And that's because it was Radio Disney at 710. And then I just kept it there and it became the sports network.
Yeah, they switched to 1110 at some point.
Yep.
To reprogram. Anyway, That's it. That's it for a nostalgia corner.
All right. Yep. And that's it for music because Radio Disney closing was the other story.
Yeah. So, did you listen to anything?
No, nothing new, but I did listen to music albums in order to get ready for our music wrap up, which you can listen to at the end of the year.
It's true. So, more music talk to come. But for now,
Video games.
yes, video games.
Yep. And we start video games with what's upcoming, including Medal of Honor, Above and Beyond for the PC.
This is specifically that VR Medal of Honor that EA and Respawn has been working on. Respawn of Titanfall and Apex Legends fame. So this is finally that being released.
We also have Alba, a wildlife adventure for the PC. Collection of Saga, Final Fantasy for the PC.
Well, I had more written here. I don't know where it went. It's collection of Saga Final Fantasy Legend, because here in the US, some of the really early Saga games were localized as Final Fantasy Legend on the Game Boy. So this is a game that collects several of those Saga games, including the Final Fantasy Legend games.
And nothing else was released. Ever.
Yeah, that's it. Slow release week, except for one more game.
Nope. Not going to talk about it because I'm not getting it. So I'm not going to talk about it.
Okay, well,
not going to be on our end of the year list. I can tell you that.
I'll do it then. For those who care, Cyberpunk 2077.
Wow, you can't even talk either.
I have been having trouble talking this entire podcast.
I have not noticed.
So yeah, Cyberpunk 2077 is the big new release this week. We'll talk about it a little more in the news stories.
Right. It's available for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. If you haven't have a PS5 or Xbox Series X, just go get the PS4, Xbox One version. They'll work the same.
Well, no. Well, okay. Here's the thing: is that there are doing an upgrade patch for next gen. That patch is not out yet, and there's no specific release date for it quite yet. All we know is it'll be sometime early next year,
after they've patched out all the bugs that they gave copies to reviewers for.
Because from what I understand, that thing is a mess upon launch,
or at least a mess to the reviewers that they gave discs to.
Yeah. There's a day one patch for launch that they say that might resolve some of those issues, but there's no way of knowing until the game comes out on Friday.
Right. I did see a hilarious tweet that's saying that as of tomorrow, there will be more people from the IP address of New Zealand than there are people in New Zealand.
Using their freaking
VPNs.
Yeah, VPNs to download the game early.
Yep.
That's funny.
But yeah, Cyberpunk 2077, that game from CD Projekt Red that's been advertised for 12 years now.
No, not quite that long.
Well, we knew they were always working on it.
E3 2013,
I believe, 7 years
was the launch trailer. So, or the announcement trailer. So yeah, at least 7 years of development.
Mm-hmm. That means Kingdom Hearts beat it by a year.
Just barely.
Just barely. Okay, let's get to the actual video game news then.
Why don't we?
And our favorite legal action lawsuits. Wait, no, sorry. My favorite legal action lawsuits.
Yeah, except this isn't so much about the lawsuit and more about the people it hurt, unfortunately.
Right, because a legal threat from Nintendo has shut down the manufacturing and sale of custom-designed Joy-Con controllers honoring Desmond Etika Amofa. The cease-and-desist demand was sent more than 2 months ago, news of it broke this weekend and drew widespread condemnation for Nintendo on social media.
Yeah.
The controllers, called Etikons, earned more than $36,000 in funding on Indiegogo in August of 2019, Shortly after Desmond Amofa died, with a YouTube following of more than 800,000, Amofa was celebrated for his over-the-top reaction videos and his fandom for Super Smash Bros. And other Nintendo franchises. Amofa died by suicide in June of 2019 after uploading a disturbing video in which he discussed thoughts of self-harm. Proceeds from each sale had gone to the JED Foundation, whose mission is to support the mental health of teens and young adults and prevent suicide. Nintendo's problem was the use of trademark, not the modification on their hardware. The Eticons bore a logo saying Joy-Con Boys. Apparently, they could remake the controller without the Joy-Con Boys logo, but that would require another factory run and fundraiser to support it.
Yeah.
So this was some people trying to do some good things that Nintendo doesn't want to play ball with, or rather, trademark doesn't want to play ball with.
So yeah, I mean, this sucks for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, yes, Nintendo is always litigious about these kind of things. Basically, anything that that they have a trademark on, they're going to do takedowns for it, and so this is not any different than that. The only thing is that the difference is that yes, you're right. This was such for a good cause, and it had no ill will and was not meant to be a direct competitor to Nintendo in any way. It was just a charity that they had crowd funded and done for a good cause. So Nintendo rolling in and doing this now has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. People are looking at this as like, come on, read the room, guys. Like, this is clearly for a good cause. And if the thing is really just the logo, then whatever, right? Like, so it's a lot of people are just confused about why Nintendo would fight this fight when everything else totally makes sense. It makes sense that they're a litigious company, but this specific instance just seems like overkill. And yes, they could just remove the logo, but it's not just as simple as just removing the logo. As the story says, that money has to come from somewhere, right? And they would have to start a new crowdfunding campaign in order to do another run without the word Joy-Con on it. So yeah, it just seems like small potatoes for Nintendo to care, but that's what the company is.
I mean, it's also a cease and desist letter. You can always ignore it, but then you're going up against Nintendo.
Right. And they, yes, have proven themselves, especially with the ROM sites that they showed to shut down over the years, that they are not afraid of putting up millions of dollars in front of people suit-wise to keep them from doing this.
Yeah, it's just a bad look overall.
It really is.
Put it past them though.
But this is a company that's already been had instances where they've shut down, they've put cease and desist orders for literal children putting Pokemon characters on their posters for their birthday invitations. That's a precedent that this company has done. So it's not.
Wait, I thought it was Pokemon. I thought it was Nintendo characters in a preschool.
That is a different case.
Those two, but still Nintendo.
Yes, but still Nintendo. Both of those cases do exist. Yes. They're just constantly litigious about this kind of thing. But yeah, just read the room, guys. This is the one time this would clearly be inappropriate.
It's protecting their trademark, protecting the brand.
It's
for the brand.
But yeah, it's definitely showing a lot of people another side of Nintendo that maybe some people aren't aware of.
Corporate side.
Yep.
All right. And lastly, we talked about it. You probably already, not us, but you, the listener, have probably already pre-ordered 3 years ago when you could for the game Cyberpunk 2077. But if you may have some epilepsy concerns during that time, well, boy, do I have a game not for you.
Yeah, maybe don't play Cyberpunk if you have a history of epilepsy.
Because following a report from Game Informer on epilepsy seizure risks in certain areas, and missions of Cyberpunk 2077. Developer CD Projekt Red says it's adding a clearer warning for epileptic players and is actively working on a quote more permanent solution. The studio didn't specify how it will handle these risk factors, only that it's currently exploring that and will be implementing it as soon as possible. Meaning, eventually.
Yeah.
The obvious and most requested solution is the option to disable or dramatically tone down the lighting effects in question via the game settings. Some colorblind settings provide serviceable workarounds already, but epilepsy is a spectrum with a range of triggers. So a dedicated off switch would be ideal. This is not only this would not only make Cyberpunk 2077 more accessible to epileptic players, it would also give players the ability to tone down effects which could cause eye strain, migraines, or other systems. From what I have read, that this where this takes place, it is an unskippable mission and
Mhm.
part of the main story. So
Yes.
you have to go through it.
So there's two things that I want to bring up about this. One, obviously, video games for the last 2 decades have had epilepsy warnings before they start. It's been a requirement from the ESRB for the, like I said, at least the last 2 decades of video gaming. So yeah, people know going in that there's always a risk playing a video game that it could have epileptic effects, even on people that don't have it in their medical history. But this is not that. So why this is making news and why this matters is because, one, like you said, it's unskippable. It is part of the main mission. So if you're playing through the story of this game, you will run into this, from what I understand, more than once, as it is tied to a mechanic that recurs. And the second thing is that apparently the mechanic in question, people are saying, is comparable to um, the kind of images that are triggered in a medical setting when a doctor wants to induce a seizure in a patient for testing purposes. Apparently, it's so similar that people are saying this has to be like a
Intentional.
choice. It had to be a decision that they made to make it so similar. They had to have prior knowledge about these devices and wanted to replicate a version of that in the game. So at what point in the development process did someone say, maybe people are going to have an issue with this? Like CD Projekt Red's initial reaction to this was, well, it is in our EULA, but maybe we need to make it more clear. It's like, well, first off, that's a bad answer. Like, no, clearly this is something you shouldn't bury in a end user license agreement. This has to be something that's forefronted before people play the game that need to know about this kind of thing.
Right, it's a health warning, and normally
Yeah.
those health warnings are put in right at the beginning when you first boot up the game.
Right. Like I said, there is probably some version of that, but it's not harsh enough. They need to make sure people know, because something that this story does not bring up is that Game Informer reviewer did suffer a seizure from this. It was not, a particularly harsh one. They did not have to be hospitalized for it. But it is proven that someone with a history of epilepsy did indeed have a seizure from this scene. If I was CD Projekt Red, that is, I feel like, means enough to maybe stop the game from being sold until they fix this. This is, to me, a health risk, not just something that they're like, we'll get to it.
Right, but when The Incredibles 2 had the seizure-inducing scene, they made theaters put out warnings
Yes.
on the front box office that said, if you're buying tickets for Incredibles 2, there is an epileptic-inducing scene.
They needed to do something like that here. 100%. They needed to have something in the box, something that made it very clear during this mission, this thing will happen.
Well, I don't, because it's unskippable, you won't have a Call of Duty thing where you can skip a controversial mission.
Yeah, but that's something that's really easy for them to implement in the future, and that's what ultimately they should do, is just allow the player to choose whether they want to see this or present an alternative version that will not be as harsh. Like, it's just, I don't know, just something about this is just, it's part and parcel with the way they marketed this game. They seem to be so into the hardcore kind of edginess of the Cyberpunk universe that I think they're pushing a lot of people out that could potentially enjoy a game like this. And I think this is just a further example of that. It's just a further example of CD Projekt's willingness to be like, you're not hardcore enough for Cyberpunk, which is the attitude they've had this whole time, whether to trans people, whether to, to people who are sensitive to violence, sensitive to all sorts. And it's a gross look in 2020.
Well, don't forget they're also sensitive to the racial stereotypes with the Creole gang.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that this week with a lot of people talking about how this game treats race, and yeah, it's not great either. It's like, who is this game for? I don't know what they're trying to do. Like, if anything, they should be widening their audience, not making it smaller. But I'm not a Polish game developer, so what do I know?
What do you know?
I do know that wraps up the video game section of this podcast, unless you have any games you want to talk about.
Nope, because all the games I want to talk about, you can listen to it at our end of the year wrap up.
Exactly, and that's where we'll leave y'all. Thank you for joining us for this regular edition of the Media Boat podcast. But we are, as we said at the top of the show, prepping our year-end wrap-ups. They will appear in the final week after Christmas of 2020 into the beginning of 2021 on New Year's Day. So tune in for that. Those will, if you're interested, be available on our podcast feeds. So if you want to listen to us in podcast form, you can do so on all sorts of different services: Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you enjoy your podcasts. You can find us just by searching Media Boat Podcast. You can get our regular shows as well as our year-end wrap-up shows when they launch. If you'd rather see our funny mugs on your computer or television set, you can watch us on YouTube. Our regular episodes are uploaded on there. Just search YouTube for our Media Boat Podcast channel. You can find it. Yep, we'll be making weird faces just like the ones Mike's making right now.
Which you can only see on the YouTube channel.
Yes, only exclusive faces on the YouTube channel. So go there and like, comment, subscribe, the usual business. You can also find us social media at Media Boatcast is our Twitter handle. Facebook, search Media Boat Podcast to find our page. MediaBoatPodcast.com is where you can see some write-ups from our past and podcasts posts from our current, as well as some wrap-up posts in the future. We should probably write those pretty soon. You can also, so if you're curious about what Mike thought about Palm Springs earlier in the year, you can find it there. That I think will do it. If you want to email us for questions, comments, whatever you want to say, that's mediaboatpodcast@gmail.com. And with that, that'll do it for this week's episode. We'll be back for episode 258 next week, I believe.
Yes, 258.
258. And until then,
we'll have more news, more thoughts.
We'll have thoughts about the Game Awards. Those are happening tomorrow night, streaming. So tune in if you want to see that. I'm sure we'll talk about it next time.
We'll have thoughts on whatever Disney decides to pull, and thoughts on whatever we else decide to finish watching.
So it might be a busy week next week for all we know. Maybe some late breaking news to cap out the end of the year.
And with that, we're done. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. See you next time.